Believe it or not, I flew to Key West, Florida to eat at Margaritaville. I also shot a documentary while I was out there. In all seriousness, I got contracted to go ahead and shoot a documentary out in Key West, Florida. I was really excited for this documentary. It's kind of been a piece that I've been working on over the last 3 years. See, we've been doing these short little documentaries, about 5 to 7 minutes, about working on climate change and helping to better educate teachers within K through 12 schools on climate change. I've flown across the country for this documentary, and we've kind of put together these almost bite-sized news snippets to show the work that we're doing. Now, these bite-sized snippets often come out in different publications, online, and just a bunch of stuff. And on top of that, I also take a bunch of photos to kind of go along with those publications to show what we're doing. Think of it almost as like a Vice news piece that you'll see on YouTube. During these pieces, we kind of do a day and a half of B-roll footage and then about a half a day of interviews. So that's what I was gearing up to go ahead and do. Now, without further ado, let's go to Florida. We're gonna take a pit stop 1 second. Now, I love the YouTuber Eddie Burback, and as soon as I figured out that I was going to be heading to Key West, Florida, there was one thought that popped into my mind. My favorite YouTuber ate at every single Margaritaville in the United States and Canada. And you know where there's a Margaritaville? Key West, Florida. If I was going to be so close to a Margaritaville, I thought I was going to have to take a little bit of time to indulge in the incredible Jimmy Buffett themed restaurant. So when I realized I was going to have the opportunity to do it, I realized I could live just a little bit like Eddie, and Jimmy Buffett too, I guess. Now, shooting a documentary like this is a little bit of a challenge, also because we're on boats and all over these weird places, so I can't have a huge kit with me. This meant all the stuff I had to be carried on my body in either a backpack or another way. I chose to use the Peak Design sling, and in my sling I could put a few different pieces of kit. I knew I was going to be leaving with my camera built every day, so I didn't have to worry about transporting my camera in this sling. That meant for this sling I could use things like filters, lenses, batteries, microphones, and media. So what camera did I end up picking? Well, I picked the Sony FX30. This is because it's light and it's small. I definitely would think about using something like the FX3 in the future, but I personally don't own an FX3, and the FX6 to me felt like too large of a camera for something like this. Also, because I had to keep flipping back and forth between video and photos, the FX6 doesn't take photos, and I didn't want to have to carry 2 cameras on me to jump back and forth, so the FX30 was the camera that I landed on. I carry my main lens, which is the DZO 35-80. This is why I'm shooting about 80% of the content on, and I'm doing all of the interviews and like the main content on this lens. I also had a Sony 16-35. This is what I'm doing a lot of the photos on and the wider stuff. And then I also carried a Carl Zeiss Jenna 20mm. I love the way the Jenna looks, and I really sometimes wanted to be on the Jenna over the 16-35 just to have that versatility of the 20mm prime. You might be wondering, why do I have a 20mm prime when that's covered in my Sony 16-35? And the main reason for that is because I really like the way that the Zeiss renders colors. I think it's a lot closer to the DZO lens that I have, and I feel like the Sony lens just doesn't look as good as the Carl Zeiss lens. Now, this is all personal preference, so I carried both lenses on me, especially since they're both small, and the Zeiss is just this little bit of a pancake lens, so it really didn't take up too much space in the bag. In the bag, I also carried a card book. I carried my Rode wireless mics so that we could do any audio when we felt was necessary. I carried a slew of Sony batteries, and I carried 2 Insta360s on me, the Insta360 One R and the Insta360 Go 3. And that's what I had on me at all times shooting this documentary. Without further ado, let's get into how I made this documentary. So 6 a.m. went off and I headed straight to the airport. Personally, I love traveling, so going to the airport's never really that big of a deal for me, but today was gonna be a long day. It was gonna be about 10 hours of travel. I had to fly from Albuquerque to Dallas-Fort Worth, and from Dallas-Fort Worth over into Key West, Florida. I also had a pretty big layover too between these 2 flights. Getting straight to the airport, I self-checked my bags, passed them off, went through security, and headed to my gate. The night before this, I was up pretty light packing, getting ready for this trip, so this coffee was definitely needed. I sat down at my gate, waited to board, and went ahead off on my way to Key West, Florida. And as I left Albuquerque, there was just one thought in my mind. I was just gonna be a little closer to Jimmy Buffett. I was just one step closer to living my Jimmy Buffett lifestyle. We landed in Dallas-Fort Worth. I headed off my flight and went straight over to my connection. Dallas-Fort Worth is a really fun airport, but it is massive and you always have to take the train to connect gates. So I went ahead and connected from C gate over to A gate. And once I was at my gate, I took a pit stop at Einsteinsboro Bagel to get my first meal of the day. Unfortunately, it was not Margaritaville, but the bagel still helped me get through this flight. I waited, boarded, and we headed off towards Key West, Florida. As soon as we landed in Key West, Florida, the entire airport was under construction, so we deboarded the plane on the runway. And then we proceeded to walk through the runway to this tiny little baggage claim where I did get to claim my bag, get into the car, and we headed on our way out to the hotel where we were staying at. As soon as we got out there, this property was gorgeous, and I had some work to tackle before the night was over. So I began by plugging in all my batteries, getting ready, getting my kit ready for the next day, as my call time was 6 a.m. I sat by the ocean and watched the sunset. I looked out to the beach and really thought to myself, Eddie was here, Jimmy was here. When I hear Margaritaville, this is the place that it was written about. It was really quite a tranquil experience, but at the end of the day, I had to go to bed because I had work at 6 a.m. Morning came and I woke up in my dorm, 6 a.m., got my gear and I headed out. They had some breakfast prep for us, so I grabbed a muffin and a banana, put my lens on my camera, and we got straight to filming. Today we were going to be heading out on a boat and going snorkeling. We're going to be doing some research on the corals within the ocean. We were looking at two things, the natural corals, how they've died, and also corals that had been transplanted, grown in a research facility, the one we were staying at, and been put into the ocean to help bring back coral life into the sea. So we got suited up, headed out onto the boat, and began filming. My real goal here was to take action shots as people got ready with their scuba gear, and then got shots from on top of the boat of people getting in, getting out of the water, snorkeling around, just kind of getting some general shots that I could. Now in terms of in the water shots, we had a couple different plans. We kind of had a mix of cameras that we had for this. We had 2 GoPros and 2 Insta360s. So of the 10 people we had in the group, we assigned a couple people with GoPros and a couple people with Insta360s. My favorite camera to use for this was the Insta360 Go 3, specifically because I could still monitor what was going on the back of the camera while the person actually had the action pod who was going snorkeling. The only downside with using the Insta360 is that the action pod only has about a 30-minute battery life once it's outside of the action pod, and unlike the GoPro where I can just swap batteries in and out, the Insta360 has a charge, and once it's dead, the action pod needs to be connected and get a new charge. Now I really like Insta360 for their color science, their log profiles, their larger sensors, and their better performance in low light. The Go 3 does not have as great of a performance in low light, but I'll be doing another event like this in Tennessee in July, and I think for that I'd like to upgrade to the Ace Pro 2. I'm a personal Insta360 owner. I own the Go 3, which is what we used. I rented from a friend the other Insta360, and then 2 of the scientists who were being filmed actually had GoPros, and we were able to get them for the shoot. Being in the boat was gorgeous, and it was gorgeous to be able to do this work out here, and I feel very grateful that I got brought onto this project. It was a little difficult being in the boat, especially because of all the waves going on. Me being able to shoot video outside of the boat of people jumping in, snorkeling around, just kind of getting those top-down shots was a little hard because of the amount the boat was rocking. It was hard for me to necessarily just stay handheld and locked on them. But with all the different cameras we had going and the different versions of coverage we had enough that we were able to cut this project together and have more than enough footage. Once we finished the snorkeling, it was about 5 p.m. and once we got back to land, it was about 6, so we wrapped for the day. Our marine research facility we were staying at is about 30 minutes outside of Key West, and because I still had a bunch of stuff to tackle, like uploading media, getting ready for the next day, dumping all the charging batteries, and getting my lighting kit set up for the interviews we were going to tackle, unfortunately I had to wait one more day for my Margaritaville restaurant experience. But after being on the boat, I was starting to get the Jimmy Buffett experience. I was starting to get the love of the ocean, the love of the sea spray in my face, and I was really excited for my Margaritaville experience. But after being out on a boat all day, I started to get what Jimmy Buffett was talking about in all of his songs. I started to really understand the place that he'd been singing about and the place so many people had fallen in love with. And as I saw the sunset, I really started to understand why Eddie Burback went to 24 Margaritavilles. I fell asleep that night hungry, looking forward to my Margaritaville experience in just a short 24 hours. 6 a.m. rolled around again, got up, got packed, had some breakfast again, and today we were starting with a tour of the marine research facility. So I started getting shots of the different people, looking at the corals, working with the corals, getting hands-on experience with the corals, and then we had some brief kind of interviews with some of the people that were leading the marine facility, talking about what they do in their specifics and just learning about the facility and all. As I mentioned prior in this video, this whole project is built around how to better educate K-12 teachers. So here we had 10 K-12 teachers who are working to develop curriculums around climate change. So here they were really getting hands-on experience and learning about what was going on here. Following that, we went into more traditional sit-down interviews. 8 of the people were going to get interviewed, so it took me about 4 hours to go ahead and conduct these interviews. For these interviews, I had 2 lights with me. I was using a Zhiyun 100 watt light as my backlight with the cone on it at about 30%, and then I had the Nanlite 60 with my lovely development of a softbox around it. See, I didn't have a ton of room to travel with, so I did just tape a piece of diffusion over the cone of the light. It ended up really working well, and it really saved a lot of the space that I had in my suitcase. And once we had that all set up, I was ready to interview. I took my standard Rode Wireless Go mics, which allows me to get 2 lavalier inputs to the 1 receiver. And that was finally it. We wrapped the interviews, and I knew what time it was. It was Margaritaville time. I worked the quickest I could to get all this footage downloaded and get somewhat packed up before I headed into Key West. And as I drove into Key West, I realized something. Apparently, Maps has renamed the main highway there to Jimmy Buffett Memorial Highway. I personally love this, as I really felt like I was getting escorted into this Jimmy Buffett world. And every step I inched closer to Margaritaville, I was so excited. As soon as I got to Key West, I hunted for Margaritaville. I wasn't sure really where it was, but I just kind of explored the main drag, knowing I was in the right direction. And as I got there, I could hear Jimmy's soft songs singing to me louder and louder. And then I finally found it. Margaritaville. The place I was so excited for weeks while I prepped this trip was finally at an arm's reach. And unfortunately, they told me it was a 30-minute wait. So I went over to the Margaritaville gift store, and in the meantime, while I was at the gift store, I could really live the true Jimmy Buffett experience. I could get shirts, I could get shot glasses, I could even get a bucket hat. I looked at all this merch and really thought, what would Jimmy wear? Then I picked up a price tag, realized it was too expensive, and just waited it on my table. When I got escorted to my table, I was so excited to finally sit down. And I sat down, I got a menu, and I looked around feeling like I was truly in a tropical resort. And all I could think, this is where Eddie Burback sat. This is where Jimmy Buffett sat. And now here, this is where I'm sitting. We're all getting the true Margaritaville experience, and I couldn't be happier. I poured over the menu. I wasn't sure what I was gonna order. How about a lava shrimp? What about Jimmy's Jam and Jambalaya? Or the classic, a double cheeseburger in paradise. After pouring over the menu, I ended up settling on the island Greek salad and sent my order in, and I waited. And as I looked around, this restaurant was gorgeous. It was all I hoped it to be. There was Margaritaville napkins, cups. The ceiling was themed like a tropical wave, and I really thought, this is what living the Jimmy Buffett life is all about. I ended up looking for the restroom at a point, and it was one of the most interesting restroom experiences I've ever had. They took me through this tiki bar place to the volcano. And as I walked, it said the restroom was 1 mile. I was gonna have to walk 1 mile to this bathroom, and it was actually just around the corner. Seeing all this theming, I realized this is truly what Eddie Burback had in mind. This is why he took a road trip across the country. This is why he ate at 24 Margaritavilles. And I couldn't be more excited for my meal. Now, the first bite was kinda mid, but as I ate it, it grew on me. It wasn't the best salad I had, but this night was truly incredible. This was a place I'd wanted to go for 2 years, and it made the entire experience worth it. I also had spent the last 2 days working on a really important climate change documentary, so maybe this whole trip wasn't a waste. But the most important thing was this meal. And as I left Margaritaville and headed back to our campus, I realized I was living the good life. I said goodbye to Key West, Florida, boarded my flight, waved goodbye to Jimmy and Eddie, and headed on back to Albuquerque. This whole experience was really incredible. I love shooting this documentary. It posed new challenges to me in terms of how to shoot underwater without proper underwater housings or a team. Doing one-man band documentaries with me and a director is always a little bit of a challenge. And I feel like after this, I have understood that challenge a little bit more, and I'm able to better work on it for the next time I do it. I've learned new things, and I'm excited to share the new tips and tricks that I've learned about how to make better documentaries with you. Make sure to drop a like and ring that bell for notifications so you never miss a video. And drop a comment if you're curious on more content on how I did this documentary, and I'll make sure to educate everyone on everything that I've learned about making solo documentaries. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.